So I think I'm gonna just jump this off with we've been having these conversations in this group. This is the Intuitive Social Club, and pretty much it's been you and I or other intuitives, MBTI intuitives. Just means you have an N in the second slot, and just having these conversations. We've been doing this. I don't know. Wow, over 4 years now. I think.
Jeez.
Yeah, so trying to transition this over to something more structured and hit some topics. And I think it's deserved. So, and I think what's come clear, especially in the last couple of days, is there are people who deal, and I might need to use an example, and this might kick off the conversation a little bit. I was involved in a conversation, like a big web chat. What is it called? WhatsApp chat. And somebody introduced a talk about red pill manosphere stuff, right?
Mm.
And they took like a philosophical approach to it. I mean, these are philosophers, I mean, actual philosophers and people who are involved in that world. And they took a philosophical approach, and one of them I think is in a relationship, and one of them is not, but looking for a relationship. I thought the talk was okay. I thought it was. I think it was. I think it's a great topic to have to use to take a thoughtful approach. And I guess my point is that red pill it has some ideas, but I think some of the ideas are flawed. Right at their. But I wouldn't throw the bathwater out with the baby with that stuff, or the baby out with the bathwater, whatever you want to call it. But then when I took a look at the other side, and I'm thinking like, oh, okay, people are going to look at this thoughtfully. And sometimes I just get this feel like, oh wow, this isn't as connected to reality as I'd like it to be. And maybe it is, and maybe it's just that it's a reality that I'm not aware of. But my problem is just that it just didn't hit home for me. It didn't have enough. I don't know vitality. The points. The point. And I can get to some examples of that as well, real quick. It's and so I think the whole idea of men being thoughtful about having relationships, but I think sometimes they do the self-censoring thing to the point that you can't really get to the root of it because it's like they don't want to offend people, especially if like it's women in the chat or women in the room. And I,
Yeah.
my whole point, I guess, if I want to sum it up, is that there are men with a real legitimate issue. They can't find women, and they are afraid to ask the questions to even get to the root of what's going on with their situation. Not to say it's
Right.
wrong or right, but don't try to address it. You're sterilizing the conversation. It's not a lot. It wasn't a lot for me, and I don't know if that give you enough to bite into, but
I
that's
mean, I think so. I mean, I'm familiar with red pill stuff as well. I think there have been a lot of efforts made to describe how human beings are interacting, especially between the sexes, how the desire for equality has created an overgeneralization, especially between male and females, sexes, and even genders, to the point where it's challenging to have clear expectations, values, and principles to work towards. People don't know the direction, they don't know how to get there, they don't know what in the world they should be aiming for, they don't know how to become a person who is worthy of respect and a person who's worthy of praise in general, all the things that we look to society to give us these direction for. When you're raising a person, parents are supposed to point you in the right direction and tell you what to expect, what to do, and how to get there. And now we've taken a lot of the expectations away so that we can have more freedom and not feel so put upon by society. But we've not replaced that freedom with any kind of clarity or any kind of direction. So a lot of men get into this like I'm constantly I live in immaturity because there is no direction that shows me what maturity looks like. So now I'm just like I have all the options. Now I have to test every single thing in society before I can make a decision. And there's too many decisions and not enough time, and therefore I'm not making progress quickly. And so like when it comes to effectively having self-respect, I can't generate it. When it comes to establishing a relationship with somebody else and telling them, hey, this is who I am, this is where I'm going. Do you want to go with me? Can we be in a relationship together? We have a hard time doing that now because every time you try to put down a conviction or a standard and say, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm going to live by, people are like, oh, that's too traditional, or that's too short-sighted, or that's too limiting. And you're like, yeah, it has to be. That's how you say yes to something, which means you say no to everything else, because you can't do more than one thing at one time. So you have to have limits. And so
Mm,
it's very, so that being the description of the problem, it's understandable why people are looking toward this idea of we need to have some sort of solution. Now, in the solution, we have a method issue, and so a lot of the red pill people get into a I don't know what to do. So let's go back to the traditional portions. And sometimes our view of the traditional perspective has been helpful, and it said like, all right, these traditional values give me a way to become more independent from other people. I don't have to depend on my parents or society or the government or something to pick up and meet my needs. I'm like, okay, great. We're getting off of somebody else's actual living your life for you, taking your responsibility for you. Like that's great when you take on your own responsibility. Self responsibility, I think, should be toward the top of these human human values. And so I think that's great when that happens. But a lot of the red pill people take our current day understanding of the traditional values too far in the idea of strength, and they say, well, you need to be good at things, and therefore I need to be so good at things that I can become the most powerful person. I need to use this power to make sure nobody else is as powerful as me, and I'm going to now need to abuse this power. Now I need to go ahead and hold people down, take from other people, and keep other people like gatekeep and make sure other things don't happen. I'm like, see, now we're in a different. Now now people are shooting toward a different goal, and I think that's where things get off real quickly, and it's very frustrating. Like Kevin Samuels had a lot of really good wisdom for people. He's like, these are
right.
the things men have done in the past to get somewhere they need to be. This is how they dress. This is how they speak. These are the things they do to protect themselves. This is the way your house needs to look. This is how you take responsibility. The things you need to own. I mean, he just gave people something, and so
Structure.
now they had something to put there. Yeah, some sort of structure to talk about. And then he says other things that are just his things. Like he likes things in his way, and like how what he likes women to dress like, what he likes men to behave like, what he thinks about fighting and weapons is like. Some of these things are just your things, Evan. That's cool for you, and maybe you don't need to share every single thing as being from from God. Some things are just like this is what I like, and he can just say what this is what he likes.
But I mean, that's where the majority of people struggle. I
Yeah,
mean, I mean, I would almost say that most people, if not 97% of people, struggle there. I mean, everybody's going to struggle there because at some point in time, you're going to think something that you really haven't thought through completely is totally correct because you
right.
just really don't see any other way that it could be. Um, I guess I was writing down a couple little notes as you were talking. And so, like when you talk about the red pill and what they go back to, because essentially I'm gonna try to get to more of the meat of the conversation because it gravitated towards masculinity, right?
Ah, okay.
So, but the red pill piece to me. So you say people go back to these traditional views, and I think somehow inadvertently, and maybe it's inadvertently, or maybe that's just how it works. They uncover something that's real, right? They do uncover they uncover something that's fundamental that to me sometimes the person who feels like they're enlightened, they're like, oh no, we're beyond that. And I'm thinking, oh, that's no, you've just left reality,
There
you
you
know?
go. Yes,
And
you
so
mistake
yeah.
for progress.
And so I'm gonna tie in a little later piece because I haven't given the full story, but the conversation just started becoming, well, what is masculinity? And why do
Yeah,
the men need it? Why do men need it? And why does a woman's opinion matter? And then you have a woman that comes into the conversation is like, y'all, you all are pretending like the traits that you want in a man are the same traits that should come through in a woman. You all are like presenting rationality as this feminine trait where really it's not that's not really the essence of a woman, really. Right? And so I know I'm throwing a whole lot of pieces into this right now, but I want to clear it up. But these are interesting things to me because for one, I'll say these are really questions that only women can answer at some point in time, right?
which parts are things only
What
women
they want, what they want.
fair?
And I think a lot of times, and I'm gonna just put this here, men project what they want or what they want to be onto women. They cannot unsee that. It's like, oh, I want my woman to be like you want your woman to be like you. And that would be weird to me.
Exactly. But we're
And
all comfortable with similarity.
we are, but
That's not
I don't believe that they are comfortable. I don't. The thing about it is, you're comfortable with the idea of similarity because it's never really actually happened the way that you're projecting it to be to have happened. But
it never does. It can't. People are different.
people are different. But what's even worse, and what the conversation starts to crumble because the genders are different,
Yes.
and
Intentionally.
there's two prevalent issues, and they are one on each side. The it's the female view that feels like she's being diminished when you're saying, "Oh, women are different than men fundamentally." And then there's the man view who is like, "Oh, no, women can be totally the same." Or not totally the same, but more of a what's this masculinity thing? If we were just more enlightened, we could just be, I don't know, we're making too much of it. And so I think that just, it hurts the ability to learn and to grow. And so I'm going to stop right there.
So yeah, I think both men and women, I think people in general have a problem of like we are biased toward the things that we care about, right? Our own values, our own preferences, they bias our opinion all the time. And we're looking for things that we like to that we have in common with those around us that are beneficial or going to help our values make things that we care about even better. So I think there's something to be said for that. And when it comes to stepping outside of ourselves and then say, but what are the things men have in common versus the things that women have in common? What is masculinity? And what can we say about it? I think it's hard to narrow down because people haven't taken a good inventory of everything in masculine and everything feminine and say what are the things that are actually unique to these categories and what are the things that are trends and what are the things that are helpful if not desirable, and that requires more of a standard. You need some sort of standard to have that value judgment, and I think that's something that's hard to say that we all have in common. And so I think there are some human things that we can say, like if, to become a mature adult who's actually independent enough to live apart from your parents, you're going to need to be able to think rationally, think critically. You need to be able to understand reality and assess data appropriately, analyze it appropriately, make a plan, stick to it, carry it out, and so that you can do this effectively to calibrate to hit your goal. Like you need to be able to use these cognitive skills to do it. You need a certain amount of physical skills to get a job, keep a job, provide for yourself, take care of your food, clothing, and shelter. Just be an independent human being. That's not gender specific. People do this as humans, and so now that we've taken the people portion out of it, it's like what's uniquely masculine or uniquely feminine. And it's just like most men have more muscle mass than most women. Okay, masculinity entails strength. What is that strength to be used for in a masculine way? Like what is it? What has been done in a way that has been helpful, and you can make more of an idea that there are virtues that have been a strength has been used for as far as influence, that is leadership, courage. You can look at things that are, how can I put it differently? Things that men are supposed to be doing as far as roles of provision, protection, and those are all kind of traditional things that strength should entail. And I think that's helpful just to give some clarity. And then when it comes to femininity, like the things that have been traditionally delegated toward femininity are more of the understanding, empathy, the emotional support, and building more of a
Relationship.
relationship, but also like the working together, like the collaboration portion. Like there is a portion of harmony that they are delegated, whether they're good at it or not. It has been traditionally put in a feminine role, and so when I have those traditional archetypes, then it's a little bit better to say like, okay, these are needs that society has. We delegated these roles because we have to meet these needs somehow anyway. Whether it's men, whether it's women doing it, someone has to do it. And when we're like, hey, we need a masculine person here, what we're talking about, usually referring to is someone who has both the strength, the courage, foresight to have vision, and some sort of ability to execute that vision, to step into that role.
Okay. So I'm going to backtrack because I actually got to get back to what you just said. because when we talk about strength came up, and there was the first video, and then I shared another video, and strength came up as an aspect of masculinity, but not physical strength. This is a
Mm-hmm.
different kind of strength. So the first video, once again, I'm saying like I like the video, and I hope I'm not jumping around too much for people. But the first video was just going back and forth about red pill. What are the basically what are the negative effects of red pill? Because what it is that you could take red pill as pieces of ideas and maybe apply them, and maybe I think you could get some good things out of red pill here and there. But what you do see is a lot of people executing a plan. What they basically the red pill is a program, and they're like, oh, this is what you do when you see a woman. You do this. This is what I wear. This is how I dress. This is, and that's not helpful with anything. I don't think if you take anything like that, it's not a very helpful thing.
Right.
But because we're talking about relationships and women and sex, at the end of the day, a lot of times that's what it's going to come down to. People look, people will do some things that's not necessarily right in their mind. They want that connection, especially with the opposite sex. And I don't, and I'm not buying that people are like, well, I'm just going to withhold until I find this perfect person that is like super rational or whatever, part of my tribe. Any look, people want connection, and they'll if connection is open to them, many times they're going to take it.
Mm-hmm.
So that came through, and part of the comment that threw me off a little bit is was like the men in red pill talk about masculinity a lot, and the philosopher was more or less like, well, they characterize masculinity in such a way where he's saying it's a negative. It's not a negative, but I would say it's a incorrect, or maybe it is a negative view of masculinity. And he was like, well, I would think that Bill Gates would be the most masculine man if he can. Basically, his argument is like obtaining resources what makes him masculine.
I
And
hear you.
and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
What do
You
you?
know what I'm saying? Just, and so the first thing that pops up to me is just that, oh, you all are stuck in your world. This is what matters to you, and you're just projecting that onto the world. You don't care at all about how it's projecting across to the opposite sex in any way. You're just like, hey, this is masculinity the way I see it. You take it, or you should take it this way. And
Mm-hmm.
relationships and attraction are totally not that. Regardless of how much you try to train your mind, be rational, I wouldn't say, I'm not saying repress your emotions, but maybe just give them some kind of order or some kind of control. Not just out here acting crazy, but just operate within a way that has some structure or order to it. Attraction is one of those things that you can try to lie to yourself, but it's not working. It's, it doesn't work at the end of the day. You can pretend, oh, I've got this woman and she's got these grades and she looks like this and I could bring her home to mom. And if you're making a family instead of, and I'm not saying just attraction, I'm just talking about, I think there are some people who get the person who they think that they're supposed to get and try to make a relationship out of that, and then
Right.
wonder why there's cheating, or wonder why there's a lack of respect, or there's unhappiness, or these other things. You're just totally neglecting that piece of it. And so I think that kind of that flows into that. So jump a little bit, and I started going back and forth in this chat, and I throw up Harry Benswanger and James Valiant. I don't know if you've ever seen them on ARUK. I know you've seen Benswanger before, but I don't know about Valiant. And so they just had a discussion about my favorite Ayn Rand essay about a woman president. And I shared it in the group, and I'm like, hey, the most controversial essay that Rand has ever written. Because every time I bring it up around women, regardless of how much they love Ayn Rand, they're like, oh, she got that one wrong.
Right. Wait, so what now? Where are we supposed to be? How who do we admire?
So I'm gonna try to speed through this real quick. And so they brought up a lot of good points, which I'm gonna skip over for right now. But a couple things that they said. One was masculinity and femininity are not a philosophical issue; they are psychological issues,
Hmm.
right? And the
Why
other
wouldn't they
go
continue?
go go. Well, let me. I'll just say this other piece. And the other piece was the way they started to describe masculinity, and I think this was Ayn Rand's description of it was strength. I guess psychoepistemological strength, but also I guess that's really decisiveness. That's how they it was
Interesting.
kind of like Rand's description of it. I don't even think that was their description of it. So I'm gonna stop right there.
Yeah, I mean, I do think masculine and femininity definitely have a psychological component. I think everything has a philosophic component, though. I don't think they can just skip over that. I'm like, it does depend what you believe. What you believe directly affects how you behave. So I mean, it's it's both. But like I would classify it as both. But yes, there's definitely a huge psychological component to build together the mental fortitude to be able to pick your own values, to be being a self-made soul, your own values, your own goals, your own principles that you live by and you stick to. And those are the ways you kind of form your identity to be able to put that out there. And how you stick to that, I mean, that's like integrity. So I can imagine how that can be a important thing. That's a character issue. This is something that is helpful for all people to be able to know what they care about, to be able to have standards and principles that they live by, that, like give them a way to decide between things, and then have like real goals that they're trying to achieve. And so those things are, I don't know if they're uniquely masculine. I will say that people who are the most masculine have a strong sense of belief in who they are, what they care about, and where they're going. I'm like, that's that is something I would associate with masculinity.
Hmm. Oh, I mean, so I think one thing that's helpful that I always revert to is our experiences inform our psychology, not just our personal experiences, our understanding of people like us, our understanding of their experiences throughout time, throughout history, right? And because I think what that lends to is cultures.
Yes.
You know, it's like there's this it's a collective understanding over time. It's not even it's almost it's like unwritten and not rules, but it's just like, oh, we have this understanding that this person is stronger and this person is weaker, so this person gets the heavy stuff and this person doesn't. Person gets the lighter stuff. And to me, to keep questioning that over and over and over again is ridiculous at some point. But I understand why people want to push against it, because I think people do take it too far sometimes. But the problem that I have is that it's almost like you can't have these conversations in male and female groups. It's
It's
almost,
hard. It's really hard.
yeah, I mean, sometimes I wish Crystal was around, because Crystal was like the best that I've ever seen at having a female around to explain the feminine point of view. And I and the reason why I like the idea that femininity and masculinity psychological issues and not philosophical issues is because I do believe you can be rationally feminine and rationally masculine, and they're two different things, you know.
Yes.
And so it doesn't discount the idea of rationality in any way. And it really doesn't discount any idea of your psychology in any way. It's just their preferences, and these preferences.
They're achieving different goals.
Yeah, I mean, of course, and to me, I don't see how these are misaligned with reality and facts of reality. But you can't. But the problem I'm having is like, you can't have this conversation with people. They have their ideas of, oh my goodness, you're trying to say that a woman is lesser, and because of women like Rand, because of women like Crystal, I'm like, no, I can actually have this conversation, but the majority of you I can't have this conversation with. That's been my experience, right?
Yeah. They're not
And
able to hold space for that, and they can't explain their reasoning. They're just like, "You're wrong, and I don't like the things you're saying." I'm like,
right,
you may not like what I'm saying. That's not an argument. Like I hear you. You feel strongly, and that's true. That's not relevant. Like we are no longer having a conversation, but it's not because you defeated my argument. It's because you can't find your words, which is not the same.
exactly, exactly. And then at the same time, I can't I'm not going to find myself in that group because I'm just too I don't have a lot of F's to give. I don't have any. And so where other people will be like, "Oh man, let's just kill the conversation." I'm like, I can kill the conversation, but it really means I don't it's nothing for me to grasp here. There's no learning for me here anymore. And that's because we've tried to put everybody on the same plane.
Yes.
And
And
so
yeah,
that doesn't work. It doesn't work. So one of my responses was to just create a man group. Huh?
it's bad reasoning. Like it doesn't work because it's wrong. Like it literally cannot happen. And when you try to force non-reality into a competition about reality, like it didn't work out. I'm like, well, no, you made up nonsense during the competition about reality. So no, nonsense doesn't. Nonsense is still nonsense, even when we talk about genders. Like stop doing that part. It's not helpful.
Yeah. My mind wants to stay active and open to these different possibilities that people want to keep throwing out. But what it starts to come around to is it's like people who don't care. They don't care. Like if you're trying to have a relationship, an essential part of that is you're dealing with another person.
Yes.
If you're not even aware or even conscious or even trying to understand what the other person is asking for, or not even asking, sometimes you can tell a person needs a thing and they can't articulate it to you,
Right.
right? If you aren't even in that world, then I don't want to really hear your opinions about anything. It's just, oh, here's this idea of the ideal. Okay, where does the ideal meet the road? And I'm gonna get into all of this because this conversation spiraled to me. Let me take it step by step. The point was made to me is that okay, man is going to look for a rational woman, woman is going to look for rational men, and they're kind of going to hold out till they meet each other. Yeah, okay. My point back was that hey, I don't think that this works both ways, right? Maybe a woman is waiting for a rational man, right? But I don't understand where a man gets this expectation that he's going to find this super rational woman. Where are men supposed to develop this expectation?
Right.
That was my whole point. Where do they get it from? Like, okay, you're an objectivist. You care about reason and rationality.
Ding 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 ding.
You're a small part of the society that is basically a blip. Where does this prevalent expectation? Where does it come? Whose parents are like, yeah, you got to hold out for a rational woman or a rational man? What school do you go to? What popular TV show is saying anything like that? And how are these people supposed to come out of the caves in some sense and then be like, you know what? I think I need a rational woman. I'm gonna hold out until I find a rational. Who? Where does
Right.
that get developed?
But like who has whose highest value, whose deal breaker is rationality. It's just like that's not very common. People
No,
aren't going around here like, oh, this is the most rational person in the world. I put them on. This is the most rational person in the world. I put their poster on my wall. I'm like, there aren't too many people like that. I would say it's almost zero. So I mean, one of those. While it's good to say I personally value rationality, I would like that to be a higher value in the people I meet and people I commit to. That is a different conversation than saying like a rational man and a rational woman is the one thing that we are looking for. That's not the case for the majority of human beings on Earth.
not even an expectation. Like I laid out my personal case. I'm like, man, I had no expectation of ever meeting a rational woman until my mid to late 30s. I
Right.
didn't even know they existed. Like,
Right.
let me give you the nunkhead young person that comes from the world that I come from, and probably the majority. I'm not gonna say the majority, but a lot of people. Hey, get a pretty woman. That's not bad to deal with. That's good enough.
It'll be bad either way. Make it work.
Yeah.
To
Don't
make it work with. Go now.
part of it. I mean, like, and I mean, I can extrapolate it out, right? And I'm not saying that I gotta preface this. I'm not saying like this as if it's a truth. What I'm saying is that this is something interesting to understand. When you grow up in a two-parent household with mother and father, you're as a boy, you're actually learning how to deal with the opposite sex. That's
Yep.
what the training is. When I could look into my father's eyes and sometimes and be like, uh oh, okay, I know what that is. That's the I'm not going to die on this hill look. That's
Mm.
that's that's we're not no, I'm not going to have this argument. And I understand what you're saying is right, but I get it. It's not worth having that argument. And this is the training by osmosis that two-parent households get you. But people
Yeah,
try to discount like, oh, we're just the same.
there are very obvious, demonstrable differences. We're like, well, this has been done. People can pretend it is similar to what they can see because that's all they can think of. But this is actually different. We can point to the differences.
Uh, and so I keep going on because I can't help myself. I'm just like, can you answer these questions? Where are men supposed to develop this expectation? And then the conversation turned more or less like, oh, you think women are lesser. You think that,
You think that's a bad category? Making up categories. Wait, what happened? What do you mean?
so
Yeah, you don't like people. Okay, that's a value judgment. We haven't really given any information to that yet. I mean, it's possible for people to hold that judgment. I just didn't say it. Like I don't know why you would even start there, since I didn't start there.
right. So the point that I started to get to was just that because in objectivist groups, it always comes down to the novels and the stories and all of that stuff. And so and I'm like, if there's so many rational women out here, like why did Hank Reardon marry Lillian? Why did three men run through one rational woman, Hank,
Right,
Francisco, and John Galt? Why can't they find other rational women? I mean, like, where are they? Where is there a city of Dagny Taggarts?
right.
Where does this exist? Can you just help me? Can you? And it becomes like, yo, if this happens in reality, can you point it to me? And then therefore I could learn. And then so this is where most people falter, in my opinion, because maybe people don't understand like I do. It's like, look, I am willing to learn, but you'd better damn sure point out some examples to
Right.
let me know that they exist in reality. Because if you
Exactly.
don't have any examples, you're just trying to argue a point that you can't find in reality. Now, if you made a mistake and said, "Oh, you know what? I actually just identified that maybe, or maybe you didn't identify that you made a mistake in your judgment. Maybe it's just like, oh, you know, it could be hard for me to get an example. Just be earnest about trying to find an example. Because
Right.
if you're not, all you're doing is like, I like the idea, and I want this idea to be true. And
Right.
I have no intent on trying to find where this idea exists in reality.
This is an
I,
ideal. I wish it was true.
yeah.
Is it true? I don't know. I wish it was.
Oh, right. And so that's it's just so frustrating to me. And the next part of the conversation is like you could just see or sense like people becoming I don't know. I can't say if it's like passive aggressive. It's that whole idea of oh, if a conversation becomes uncomfortable, I'll just bow out. And I'm like, you all aren't looking for answers. There's a legitimate problem here. There are
Exactly.
people looking for relationships and they don't have. It's not that I wouldn't say that they don't have an understanding, but they would desire more of an understanding. But they also kind of like cowardly in having conversations about it. If
I
you
mean,
want to be more refined and say something in a certain way, now some people were saying something and trying to have the conversation, but I just get the sense that man, the issue for me. Let me just sum it up because I'm going a little bit too far everywhere. The issue is that it's just like a lot of cowardly man stuff going on. I'm not part of that. I don't really know what that is. So regardless if I can understand philosophy or psychology or whatever, I can't do the cowardly man thing. I'm not I don't think that it's a cool thing. I don't think that it I think the better you can state your point, articulate it, but I just don't think that you should back off of it because people get upset. So I'll just leave
okay.
it right there.
Fair enough. You would say that the cowardly man portion is when people back off and go passive when people get upset or you get any pushback.
Yeah. Pretty much. That's my perception of it. And I think that people who have, I wouldn't even say that they think it's a good thing. I just think that it's a thing.
Right. And it's accepted.
Yeah, it's weird to me, Josh. Like I can't. I love people who are just. If you're going to be wrong, be loud and wrong. Like I'll be loud and wrong, but I will take a side. I won't. I'm not. Well, I'm going to say take a side. I'm going to make a decision.
Right.
I might, if I'm wrong and you prove me wrong, and I'll say, okay, cool, I was wrong. You got that one. That was great. Appreciate that. But I'm not going to be like, well, if you, I'll just leave this one last piece too. There's so many people who say a thing and then undercut themselves. Say a thing, undercut themselves. You didn't say anything. You haven't said anything. Well, this is true, but well, sometimes it's not true. But you have to think about this. What? What are you saying?
Yeah, you're not communicating what you think you are. You're like, this is not helpful now. You're looking for an answer, and you're like, this is kind of sort of an answer sometimes. When I think about it, I'm like, whoa, 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 back up. If we are looking for an answer, give context, and let's move on. We're open for learning. Like you said, you can be loud and wrong, meaning you can say things that you're like, I'm not sure this is 100% correct, but this is my understanding of it so far. This is what I know.
Yeah, let your joint, let your balls hang. That's how I feel. Cause look,
Express yourself.
one thing we know for sure, we're all going to be wrong at some point in time.
Thank you. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so the whole idea of, I mean, the political correctness piece, I think that's why you get stuff like Red Pill. That's why you get stuff like MAGA, because it's too it's too restrictive. And the thoughtful people are supposed to me, the thoughtful people are supposed to try to push the boundaries as much as possible
Right.
with the tact that they have. There is
Yeah.
no perfect line. There is no perfect way to have a conversation. Push the lines. Use some principles, have the conversation, and keep going. But don't tell me that oh, I'm thoughtful and oh, I'm refined. Man, you're no oh boy. Let me make sure I want to say what I want to say. Um, I don't know. You're relevant to a small section of society, and that could be a fine thing, but don't pretend like your your opinion is going beyond here because it's just meant for a certain section.
Yeah, only
Um,
certain people are gonna relate. You can't relate to everybody at the same time, and that's okay. But it's when you're going to put your foot down, you're going to communicate something. At least let us know where you're coming from and why. Like if you say you're a thoughtful person, then I expect reasoning for your claims. You're going to say that you are a person who thinks about things, and I need you to tell me what things you think about and why it is important. I don't need to know that you care about it strongly. I need to know why you sometimes you can mention the fact, hey, I also care strongly about this. I'm like, cool, excellent. Is that relevant to what we're talking about? Did that cause you to do something to get some more data? I'm open to hearing about that data.
right.
That's great. You can tell me a story, but we can't stop with I feel strongly and therefore that's what it is. It's like, oh, that's that's actually not data. You just told me about yourself, and I don't. That is not helping me solve my problem. Like that's a cool idea for us to relate. And if you want to start there to create some sort of trust so we can start saying, okay, I can see where you're coming from. That's that can start the conversation, but we can't end there.
I take Jason Whitlock as an example. His one of his things is that introducing women into the sports conversation has sterilized the conversation.
It has made it so hard. People have stopped even trying. I'm like, wow, what do we? And like to me, that is a super disrespectful thing for women to do to themselves. Like of all the things you wanted, you achieved none of them, and now you've made it even harder to have. Every time people speak up and attack someone who has a different opinion about women in the space, I'm like, you are making it super hard for any other woman to come behind you and be like, look, we have something relevant to say. I'm like, I don't know. The last you talked, you just jumped in there, attacked everyone else for talking. You get that we don't want to talk to you about this anymore. Well, we have just as much relevant opinion. Maybe you do, but the last time I opened my mouth, you jumped down my throat and started choking me for having an opinion, and that's not that's not productive. You did not encourage conversation. So anyway, I find that to be a terrible and unfortunate. product of the certain kinds of women we have allowed to jump in this conversation and the way they've treated this newer dialogue. I'm like, are we having a dialogue? It doesn't feel like a dialogue. It feels like you just have to say the appropriate talking points, otherwise you will be canceled.
Yeah, but I'm gonna get canceled proudly. That's how I feel about it. Because here's the thing: what we've just gone through is exactly why the fringes are going to have more and more influences.
There you go.
Because the middle of the conversation is getting less and less related to reality, like real reality, and that fringes remind us more of reality, even though it includes things that may or may not be necessary or essential,
Yes,
right?
because at least the mentions are applicable. We can understand their context. We know this person cares about this because of some other concrete thing. Whereas a lot of other people are just like, who knows what could happen? It's just strange. Got to take everybody's opinion into account. I mean, I hear what you're saying. It's helpful to be respectful for other people's opinion, but there has to also be a standard where what they say is applicable and is demonstrable in reality. If it is not, then then the words they say cannot be validated. And if I cannot validate it, then technically it's already wrong. Who knows? No one can tell me it's right because we don't have a standard. We need to have some shared standard to have this conversation. And if you reject all standards just by saying everybody's standard is equally valid, then I'm like, that is the same as not having any standard at all.
I agree with you, right? But here's the thing that comes to me when you say with that. Because immediately I think, wow, there's no way to impose this standard, right?
We can't impose it, but we can certainly offer it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, no. But there, in my mind, appears that complex integration of politics in the world. And I tried to write this in the book. You can come up with this wild nonsense because there is no consequence for you thinking wild nonsense. And that's fine. If you can find a life that allows you to do that, more power to you. But if you're going to rest that on like countries that extract money out of people who are actually doing things to support people who aren't actually doing things, and you're able to live on rest on the laurels of others, then you're creating a society where you're not there's no natural incentive. I wouldn't even say incentive. There's no natural deterrent from detaching from reality. That's what I'm saying. That's the issue. And I think that's such a wide thought. I don't know if anybody's ever said that, or I don't know if people thought it. Maybe they have. Maybe I've gotten it from somewhere else. But that's because when someone else is paying the bills, things don't matter to you as much.
Yep.
And so I wish I let me just try to come up with a certain example. I don't know if you could just take healthcare or something like that.
Yeah.
If everybody else going to pay for it, you just take your chances out, and and then also you getting a double dip. Well, not a double dip, but you getting a double negative because insurance companies, medical companies are like, well, y'all don't care, we don't care. Say we just gonna hit you with more prices. It's a dead person with insurance. Okay,
Yeah. I mean, it's a push though. I'm like, all right, let's keep at, let's add this stuff and take the next step. Well, they didn't fight us on this one. Let's keep pushing. Apparently, that's not the law.
right. So because that's why decisions get made in the 11th hour because things have to matter.
Yep.
People pretend like mattering doesn't matter.
Boundaries are key. If you do not enforce these boundaries, then you do not have them. If you do not have boundaries, and other people who are the boundaries are for, like you're the only one who can enforce your boundaries. But if the boundaries are to keep other people in a place that is comfortable for both of you, you do not enforce these boundaries or express these boundaries and use these boundaries, then other people will continue to trample over them and keep pushing them. And I find that to be a very like this is a basic concept. This is you
Basic,
have to
basic.
stand up for yourself because no one else can and no one else will. And if you outsource that to other people, then you will be surprised when all of a sudden none of your values and none of your principles were taken into consideration when they make their decisions. Like, how could this insurance company vote against my interests? I'm like, oh, it wasn't in their interest. Why do you mean? Why is that? Was that not clear at the beginning when they said, "Hey, I don't care about you at all"? but if you give me money, I will make you feel safe. Like you outsourced your safety to them, and they don't have the same standard for safety. Like you want yourself to be healthy, but they don't. They don't want you to be healthy. In fact,
They don't
you
care. They're not in the business of that. That's not really their business, really. You
that is
know?
you whatever the system, whatever. Oh no, it was Charlie Munger who said, "Tell me your incentives, and I'll tell you the outcomes." He's like, I think that's how systems are designed. They are designed with incentives, and the incentive is for the insurance company not to lose money, and they won't. They're going to do everything they can to not spend money on you. If money is the thing you're looking for from them, you will be sorely disappointed. That is the one thing. They don't get more money if you get wealthier. Like it's just not a good. It's not a great system. It's clearly only set up with one winner.
I mean, so that can take me in a bunch of different places. I'm gonna jump back to something that you mentioned in the beginning about structure and choices, and it just reminded me of something that Jordan Peterson said one time. Not to say that I used to like Jordan Peterson, but
I mean, he said a lot of great things in the past. I love it. He's not.
um,
He is a person. Sometimes he says things I love less.
yeah. But he says this thing is like it was like about choices, and I think he was saying that the hard part is figuring out like if there's nothing, if there's no structure, if there's no anything, the hard thing is what do I do out of all of these different choices? What do I do?
Right. How do you make your decision if there's just nothing to go on?
And so that relates to what I was saying about this person talking about expectations because I feel like they think people pop out the womb and they're like, "Oh man, I'm a rational baby." You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right. Now
Like,
it's the only option. This is the only thing I'm going to do the rest of my life.
I
Oh,
mean, how come other cavemen couldn't figure this one out? What's wrong with him?
my perspective is the only perspective. Clearly, everybody must be doing the thing I'm doing.
Hey,
Well, I don't know if that's accurate or not. You've not even checked. You should really check first, see if that's happening.
man. So people discount history terribly.
Right.
History is your study case. It's the case that you study. It gives you all the data that you can run your studies on. Now there's gonna
Yeah.
be some narratives in that and everything, but the whole point is I needed somebody to fall off a mountain for me to know, hey, don't get too close to the edge of that mountain unless I have some gear or something. I needed that.
Gravity exists. It's probably unsafe to go above this height. Doesn't look good. But until that first person did it, we were like, well, it's just a theory. We don't have a lot of evidence. But after that 10th person did it, we got a lot of evidence. Definitely was a bad choice for a lot of those people. Gosh.
So I think so. Part of this is just about the whole idea of psychology and the evolution of psychology. And I just think some people have an irrational take on it. I think some people have conflated. They are intelligent, but I'm not really sure how rational they are.
Right.
Let me
Fact,
just
they
pop this in here because this is a type show. That is exactly to me what INTJ is. INTJ, they may be very, very intelligent and got a lot of them in this group and super intelligent, whatever. Not always rational. That's not me. That's Young. That's
right.
Young's idea. His idea is sensation and intuition are irrational functions. So that's not even me.
Not even you. That's the truth. And I think that's always something they have to be on guard since they have that propensity just to follow what it is they find in their gut, meaning they use all the data they've had in the past to make sweeping generalizations about things that are happening now and in the future. I'm like, sometimes that can give you really helpful guesses for the future because some of the things you observed in the past are relevant right now to this context. That's great. But if you don't have that ability to calibrate to know what's relevant and what's not, then sometimes you could be really wrong, just really, really, really wrong, and have to course correct way too quickly. And it's like you could have thought this through and just been like, oh, yeah, this is a different situation. This is definitely not going to work. But that would require you to be rational enough to observe the situation and know what it is. You have to pay attention.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with that. The point reason I bring it up is just a case of highly intelligent, maybe not always as rational as you might think. And I think a lot of people conflate the two.
Yeah. I mean, that's I can say that I definitely have conflated the two due to a large amount of influence and training from school. I mean, that's what a lot of the people who are thinking that is praised in school is stuff that's groupthink. You want to understand where the teacher's coming from. You want to remember and be able to repeat those things frequently, and that's has very little to do with critical thought.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, I mean, so that's all relevant, and I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to bring it back to the masculine versus the feminine piece, and the psychology of it, and just I guess I just make the case that it matters, right? I don't think that you should be like, oh my goodness, this is a masculine trait. As a man, let me go and do this trait, and then that way I'll be masculine. That's not really what I'm saying. I think what would be helpful is to know what it is, to be able to actually define what it is, and then you might be able to ask yourself some real deep introspective questions like, am I lacking this, or is this something that I don't value? If it's not something that I value, then oh well. But don't tell me that it's, oh, I don't value that, and I don't have a woman, but I want a woman, and so therefore, I mean, maybe I didn't say that correctly, totally correct, but from my history, from what I've spoken to women about, masculinity matters, and men somehow pretending it doesn't. But if you have a relationship with a woman that you're happy with, and it doesn't matter, good for you. But don't tell me that you really understand if you don't have a relationship and you're not trying to define it or understand it or evaluate it in any way. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful to have evidence. You're gonna say something, make a claim, and say this is what masculinity is or femininity is. You need to have some sort of general appreciation for principles, and then like list your examples that have those things, and we can say, oh, I can see where you got this from. These things have these things in common. Okay, that's fair. And like I do think there are benefits to having that clarity in every category, and I think that's when someone's like, I'm a child, I'm a boy. I want to become a man. What does a man look like? I want to have an answer for this child. Like, hey,
Right.
you take care of yourself and do the human things, but also you can take that next step and do the masculine things. Be able to lead in these certain situations. Be able to show your strength here, your strength of conviction, strength of your mind and your critical thought. I need you to be able to demonstrate physical strength enough to protect and provide. There are some basic things that provide the context to say, aim for these things. And that is what traditional men have been useful for in the past. Will you have to do all these things every second of every day? Probably not. But if you have a question of like, hey, what does it to mean to be masculine? I want to be able to have some sort of things to point them towards.
Yeah, man, because it's important. I just can't understand the disconnection, Josh. If
Well,
I'm
people,
going to err, I'm going to err on the side of tra- traditional ideas of masculinity.
right.
The problem is I don't. This is a false alternative, right? It's like, oh, you either do this or do that. It's not really an alternative. That's not what I'm saying. But my point is that people who try to speak out against others or men who have a presence, it's a futile argument to me. I don't want to hear about you. I don't.
They don't either.
Oh,
The point, it is a it is a people who do that are clearly trying to achieve a different goal. They are trying to fix a different problem, and I find that to be very sad. That when I hear women speak up against traditional gender roles and masculinity in general, when they're just like, all men are bad, masculinity is bad. If women were in charge, it would just make everything better. And I'm like, I hear what you're saying, and I hear why you're saying it, but what your solution doesn't match your problem. And I don't know how I don't know a nice way to say that without being like, you're wrong, stop talking. You need to go back and start thinking this through because you didn't say things that that are relevant. You're concerned about people have taking power and then abusing that power. Men who have strength and have authority and have position and have resources using these things to create injustice, to hold people down, to take advantage of people against their will, to strike people and cause harm in all these situations. And I hear you. You really are against injustice. You really are against abuse. You think abuse of power is wrong. And I think most people who believe in justice would agree with you. We're on board. Yes, abuse of power is wrong. but you can't conflate abuse of power with power. You can't conflate all power with men. Like that's too much. You are grouping too many things in the same bucket. And now when you say like we need to get rid of gender roles, I'm like you are attacking the wrong thing, and it's not going to help you because we have gender roles to solve the problem of life. There are real issues that we need people who are trained in these things, who are these strengths in these ways to help advance humanity forward. If you take that away, then we won't have that clarity. We won't encourage these people to grow into that. And if we don't value it, then we aren't going to get that. And then all of a sudden, our system's going to break down.
You're a better man than me, Josh,
You wouldn't give
because
them that. You wouldn't
nah,
give them that
nah,
grace.
nah, I'm not giving them that grace. And it's not man or female, because from what I've seen, what I've learned through this group, what I've learned through understanding psychology and type, there are people who live with contradictions. Like they have a utopian view. So
Right.
there's really no explaining anything to them. For them, everything is, wouldn't the
Yeah.
world be perfect like this?
Right.
And so what conversation are you going to have with a person like that? They're not, reality doesn't matter to them. It's not a thing. So,
On value.
so the whole idea of them conflating two views, I don't even think that is that, not all the time. Sometimes it is, right? But what I think it is just that they're rational. They don't they don't have a view. It's whatever is happening right now. Oh, this business did a good thing. That business did a bad thing. It's what's ever going on right now. So I don't give people that leniency, and so
I
have
mean,
no.
I'd push back on that. Like, it's not every person has that viewpoint, and not every
No, I never said
person
that. Yeah.
is disingenuous. So I would say there are people who truly believe that, and they may frequently in that area be irrational. They be making decisions irrationally, and sometimes it is due to the fact that they aren't using data at all, and sometimes they're using just their preferences. And so there are lots of just value judgments that people make, and they're just telling us their value judgments, and they're saying the wrong thing, meaning like they just mean that they don't want other people to abuse them, but they're saying we should solve that problem by getting rid of all differences. It's like, okay, so that's not there. These people are bad at speaking. You're not telling me your problem, and you're not telling me your solution. You're just saying like, hey, I feel strongly in this area. Okay, well, let's take a step back and start working through a solution in a way that is helpful. But maybe you shouldn't be a part of the solution. Maybe you're part of the person who's saying, wait, I'm going to flag this incident over here. I found this thing to be concerning enough. Okay, well, let's give it to the people who are the problem solvers, and we're going to let them handle it and take it from here because you are clearly biased. And you use your bias to point out this problem, but you can't solve it with that bias.
So I think that's a tough thing. I'm gonna go back to the beginning of what you said. The thing that I see is, and this is a sad thing, men don't have to care, and this is why red pill is a popular thing. They don't have to care. I'm gonna bring personal experience here. I've been with women who are like, yo, I don't know that I really like you, but there's something attractive that attracts me to you, and I get sometimes you say things that make me so mad that I don't like you, and that but I still am attracted to you. I can't make any sense of that. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, they anyway, it's funny. It's,
But at the end of the day,
I'm going to say.
if you're looking for a situationship, relation, maybe not relationship, but relation, it's there. And I don't have to care. I don't have to. If you can't figure out what you're saying, and if you can't figure out your impulses, and you want me to figure everything out for you, like you come to hang out with me, you came to go out with me. I can't know exactly what your impulses are in that moment. I can only look in retrospect. Right? I can't figure I'm not a mind reader. I can't figure out the reasons why you're doing what you well, in retrospect, I could have an idea. But I'm putting it on you. The assumption is you have agency. You're
Thank
out
you.
with me. And so
Good choices.
I've had Josh, I'll tell you, man, I've had one of the craziest nights. I don't know if I've ever said this one on camera. But one of the craziest nights that I've ever been had. Went on a date. It was a long date with this woman, and she starts. So she was a psychologist, and she starts trying to like break me down. And I'm telling her, I'm like, man, I've been through so much stuff in my life that you really can't break me mentally. It's just not happening. And so I think she just took this as a challenge. Like she's in this world. She's like, oh, and she's I can't even remember the stuff she's saying. She's like, you do this. She was trying to like boss me around, and I'm like, I'm not that kind of guy. This not gonna work out well for you. I'm just here having a good time trying to get to know you, and I could just see her like trying to figure a way to push my buttons, and then she tried to insult me. And some people might be like, well, why did you stay there that long? I'm here. I'm entertained by this because I'm learning how her mind works when
There you
she's
go.
dealing with me, right? And so she's saying all of this stuff. And meanwhile, we kissing here, and then she's like saying something to me really weird. And she's like, she gets in the car. She's like, if you don't apologize about something, I don't remember what it was. She's picking fights. This is kind of what this was happening,
Right?
right? And she's like, if you don't apologize, I'm gonna just drive off or something. And I'm like, look, I'm about to leave, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And she's trying to play this hard to get role or whatever. I can't remember the whole story, so it's like loops in it. I mean, a lot of holes in it. I wish it weren't. But long story short, she says something, and I'm like, I'm about to pull off. I think she's just waiting for me to come back, and I just pull off. I just pull off on her, right?
Yeah, I'm done here.
So as soon as I get out of this parking lot, this mall. It's like a strip mall parking lot. So as soon as I pull onto the main strip, I start getting a text like, "You blah blah blah. You, oh, not a, but
Some
you're a
result.
gay man. Yeah, some kind of insult, right?" But I'm not answering because I got like a 45-minute ride home. I might have answered one time. My thing was, I said something like, "Look, if you keep disrespecting me, I'm gonna block you." That's
Yeah.
pretty much what my response is. But I'm about to go on a 45-minute ride home. I get home and I get a call. Like, why did you leave?
Like who could say? I mean, you're all just out here.
And this boy that's like, I was going to tell you to come with me, blah, blah, blah. You could have came over. And I'm just like, and I know this is just one small anecdotal story. This is representative. It's not to say that all people are like anything. It's just to say that in my experiences, I don't have to care all the time.
Right, right. And it's especially in that situation where there's a huge power dynamic difference. It's just like, hey, nothing you say matters. Like I can be really excited about this, and you can test me all night to see how strong I am in here, how strong I am over there, how I'm going to represent myself. But like at the end of the day, like if I don't like you, I just go. Like it is relevant to you, but it's not relevant to me. Like these are things that would really offend someone who like needs your opinion, but I don't need
Right.
it. I came here fully whole before I met you, and as long as you keep offering me value, I'll keep enjoying the value. But like eventually, if the pros and the risks outweigh the benefits, then I'm gonna go find more benefits somewhere else.
Right. And yeah, man. I guess my whole point behind that is that I think Red Pill teaches a piece of that,
It
right?
does. It just tells people like, hey, you need to stick to your opinions, and that part I think is why where a lot of people get hooked early is they say, look, somebody's standing unapologetically saying, this is who I am, I'm authentic about it, and this is where I plant my flag. I have conviction, I have integrity, this is what I believe, and now my actions match up. And people are like, I like that. I'm like, okay, that's a step.
Yeah. But the tricky thing is that you'll get love and hate from the female side on that. And a lot
Yes,
of times from the same person. And to me,
that's fair.
and I don't know if I actually said this to you before or read this piece. It's just popping up in my mind because this is coming straight from Jung on something similar. I wouldn't say it's the exact same thing, but um, he's talking about differentiation. It says differentiation means the development of differences, the separation of parts from a whole. In this work, I employ the concept of differentiation chiefly with respect to the psychological functions. So long as a function is so focused with one or more functions, thinking with feeling, feeling with sensation, etc., that it is unable to operate on its own. It is in an archaic condition that is not differentiated. not separated from the whole as a special part and existing by itself. Undifferentiated thinking is incapable of thinking apart from other functions. It is continually mixed up with sensations, feelings, intuitions, just as undifferentiated feeling is mixed up with sensations and fantasies. As for instance, in the sexualization, this is from Freud, of feeling and thinking in neurosis. As a rule, the undifferentiated function is also characterized by ambivalence and ambitendency. That is, every position entails its own negation, and this leads to characteristic inhibitions in the use of the undifferentiated function. So that's pretty much kind of what I'm just saying is that love and hate is intertwined. The person he talks about this, I can't find that specific part. He talks about it in more of a, I think it's a extroverted feeling type where they love and hate the same thing, and that's just natural procedure for them. You know, that's basic standard operating procedure because they can't differentiate. The good things about a thing is not separated from the bad things about a thing. It experiences the thing as a whole and experiences both pieces of it, and they just can't separate them. It's undifferentiated.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's sad and frustrating that they've seen. I imagine people learn that from observing other people test boundaries. They see how other people demonstrate conviction, and they're like, "Oh, look at this." Sometimes people who I admire demonstrate their conviction by implementing rules on other people, enforcing their boundaries, but also just pushing other people's boundaries. And that level of agency is admirable, and therefore I want to achieve some of that. I don't know how to calibrate, so I'm just going to go ahead and just randomly and see what happens. And whoever sticks around, I know I did it right. Like, oh, that's not how that works at all. And the people who stick around may not always be doing it because of your social skill, but instead because they just have their own insecurity that allows them to tolerate this level of abuse from you. Like you're doing the wrong thing for the wrong reason, and there's no way for you to check if this is going well or not because you don't have that. You just have a thing in your mind like I see people push boundaries, I'm gonna push boundaries too. So let's see how that goes. So that's frustrating, but yes, they can certainly treat you lovingly sometimes and treat you in hateful ways other times. That's it's very inconsistent because there's no appropriate calibration. There's no way for them to know. Like they're not actively trying to know, like using data.
Or they don't have the capability to
I mean, maybe
separate it. They just, I mean, it's, undifferentiation is similar to concretism. It's
yeah,
just the concrete. It's concrete. You can't separate one piece out from the other. You can't take the color or the size or you're not seeing the different characteristics of a situation or a thing or a person or whatever. But I guess it's just I can't hear. I don't know. I think feel like I'm discouraged in this sense, right? And it's kind of like why I want to have these conversations because I think I'm at the self. I wouldn't say I'm an intellectual, but I'm a thoughtful person, and so I'm not trying to hear ideas that don't connect the rubber to the road.
right. There's
I'm
got to be an
not.
application portion eventually.
Yeah, there, and it's a lot of that going on, and I think some people just need help, and some I don't know, maybe some people already grasp it, but it's just that this is the reason why things like red pill exist. This is the reason why things like tea parties exist, why
Mm-hmm.
MAGA exists, because they're still steeped in something that is really real and something really old, and maybe they haven't developed to recent levels of thinking or whatever, but you still need the concrete. If you're chiseling away from a rock to make a sculpture, you still need the rock. You can't chisel an egg. So it needs to be something there. And yeah, man. So the whole idea of masculinity and femininity, this is why I love Ayn Rand. This is why I love Crystal too, because men love to hear a woman articulate the woman's perspective
Yes.
because we don't get it. We,
Yeah,
we
we can. Well, we have not experienced that. We want to hear what you experienced.
yeah,
It's a huge black hole, and like we can only guess until someone's like, by the way, I thought this, I thought this, I thought this. Oh, I did something. Like, thank you for logically connecting the dots. I don't have your experience. I won't know unless you tell me. Please tell me.
we won't. It's a blind spot. The
Yes.
other part of it is, especially for like super attractive women, you cannot understand what is, and I'm not going to cry about being a man. It's easy for you. If you want a relationship, all you do is drop a napkin.
Every day, every moment, someone is always asking for your attention. You just give it to them, and then all of a sudden, you're in a relationship. Just like
Something. You got men hop on dating sites and get nothing. Women hop on dating sites and quit because the inbox is just too full. It's not equal on both sides.
no,
So
with life and experience, especially higher up you go, the higher value you are, the more you're gonna get just whatever you want. But certainly attention. Certainly attention is getting to the people who have the highest value. But it's not this way for everybody, but for the highest value people, this is who it is. This is what these are the people, and these are their experiences.
I mean, for attractiveness, yeah, I mean, look, attractiveness is easy because it's right there. you know, I don't, I don't know if I want to talk to that woman across the hall, across the floor later about. I don't know if we can have an interesting conversation, but I can tell you that she looks attractive right now. I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know if she speaks the same language. I don't even know.
Don't know.
Have
Don't care.
no clue.
Does not change how attractive this person is.
No, not at
Not.
all. So, but I don't think a world where men aren't having relationships is a good idea.
No. No, it's one of the few things to help counter the abuse of power is the fact that your actions have consequences. And if you take away those consequences, then I can't pretend that it gets better. Like, well, I mean, you're good. People are going to grow by people intrinsically. Sorry, men intrinsically are going to grow into positions where they have power. Meaning, the more they grow up and they actually do things, participate in life, they are going to develop strength. If you don't teach them ways to use their strength well, then there's significant danger for them to use their strength any other way, which will typically be poorly. And
Gotcha.
it's something that the more connections they have to society, to other members in society, then they have a better pool of evidence to understand. Like, okay, this is what safety looks like. This is what the appropriate use of power is. But also, these are the consequences of using power poorly. When I get really strong and I use my power to instead of using my words to argue with somebody, I just use my fist. Well, that really hurts the people I'm around, and I no longer get the benefits I would have typically gotten from them. I don't get the affirmation and the acceptance and the approval. I don't get the ability to trade with them. I don't get to use their strengths to compensate for my weaknesses. Like, we lose a significant amount of the benefits of cooperation, and I think that's a huge part with that, a huge argument, a huge point in the idea. Like, if you want a society that is balanced, if you want there to be actual equality, then we need to actively recognize our differences, male and female, and then say this is the ideal form of masculinity that we're shooting for. These are the values and virtues we want to see in our men. These are the values and virtues we want to see in our women. And if we can clarify those things and work toward that, then there's a lot more balance in society. I think that's the part that I don't hear enough talked about when people are like, we want equality. I'm like, we want equality before the law and we want there to be justice. Yes, but we don't want actual equality of outcomes or equality of people. We're not, I don't want your daughters to be the same as your sons. That would be crazy. Like, that won't help you with the things that you need. Aren't we trying to build a society that can stress test things, that can actually be good enough to withstand certain amounts of trouble? Isn't there lots of trouble in life? Wouldn't you want people who are skilled at different things to combat this trouble? Please stop making everyone the same. Please stop trying to conflate everything into just, as long as we're on the long as we have the same, stop treating every, I don't like the idea of treating everybody as if they are, if they are the same, as if they are interchangeable. That is the mistake that we have. We should look at everybody as equal in value, but very, very like, as far as intrinsic value, like respect, everybody should be treated as respect, as a respectable human being. But then we should look at them very, very differently as far as what they are able to do. Like, their ability is so varied, which is great because we need that. I need
I
that personally.
agree. I mean, I agree. I mean, as you're talking, like it comes down to me. This is a man issue, right? So because when you start talking about safety, and if I had to pick one group that I'm getting safety from, is it any percent chance that I'm gonna get it from women versus men?
Exactly. No, zero.
0%, right?
Right.
So the idea to me is, and this is part of what I touched on in the book, is this is an idea between men and men. And it's more of a, I deal with the middleman. I deal with the morally agnostic. And I'm like, oh, okay, if you don't want to decide, or if you are cool with letting anything fly, I will cut off my ties with you, or I will make it difficult for you to be the middleman. Not to say that I'm going to offensively or to to attack you or anything like
No,
that.
you don't have to do that. You just
I will
withhold.
cut you off. Yeah, I'll cut you off. It's just like an embargo with like Cuba or something like that. So, but people don't really put those things together. They're just like, well, people are people and blah blah blah. But that's what I mean. It's certain types of men that I try to influence, and women too. Don't get me wrong. It's women who are like that too, I think, who grasp that idea. But those are the people that I try to influence, because I think if they had a structure, a way to go about taking these actions, and understand the long range view of what these actions would, where they would end. That's my thought process on that piece.
Yeah,
Um,
me either.
so me, the super thoughtful person, which I root for the super thoughtful person. I just need you to be a little more tough, because if you have all these good ideas and you still let the caveman dominate you, what is all of it for? I mean, just think about it. To me, like, you get people that come together all the time and it's like, oh man, look at politics. This person is irrational. That person is irrational. They're doing this wrong. They're doing that wrong. But they still tell you what to do.
Right?
Where are you? Where are you? And I'm not saying that you should go over there and fight them. I'm saying that you should take your ideas and use them, leverage your ideas with, I wouldn't say, it's not what I'm saying.
No, action.
Have,
You see it, follow
yeah,
through. If you say you have a better idea, demonstrate it. Demonstrate it in a way that makes sense, that benefits you. Because there's no reason to voice your opinion and be like, I think this might be right. I'm like, well, go get evidence and come back. When you have evidence, then then we can have a conversation. Until then, we're all just pontificating, and I'm okay with people just throwing out ideas when we're brainstorming. That is the time to throw out baseless stuff. It's like, what about this? What about that? And we can all just kind of like, oh, then we can think critically about those ideas. And then that's a much different point. But to show up at a conversation where there is an actual problem and people are like, oh, this is a problem, and this is a problem, and this is a problem. I'm like, that's cool. I'm happy we have people with the ability to notice problems. Let's take the next step and say, let's pick one problem we want to solve, and let's brainstorm ideas of how we can fix this. And that's something that we can do. Like, that is a level of organization and leadership where I think that is where I get excited when I see people who are able to take the ball and actually move things forward.
yeah. I mean, but when you mention evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like it's like step one, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm looking at conviction. You could say who's right, who's wrong. Anybody, people make this argument, right?
Yes.
And if you bring evidence and people refuse to engage with the logic, and if you refuse to acknowledge the evidence, that's where they're going to land anyways. Oh, who knows? Things could be, they could not be. And you got to have a conviction. Look, let me give a perfect example. Declaration of Independence. Hey, you've done this, you've done that, you've done this, you've done that. We getting ready, it's on site. Right now it's on site. We have a conviction. We've put this evidence together. You could say, well, why don't you get some more evidence? No, evidence getting is out the window. We now
Right.
have a conviction and it's on site. And so my issue is I don't see the on siteness. That's not a word, but you don't get the conviction. And to me, the conviction,
You have to actually make decisions to say, this is my threshold, these are my boundaries, and these are my deal breakers. Once you hit these deal breakers, you cross this threshold, and there's no more talking about it after that.
right, right, and then that spills back into decisiveness. decisiveness. That spills back into masculinity. Because to me, this perpetual conversation having stuff, like, this is why masculine men sometimes you be like, I don't give a damn. Like, they just come in and they just start doing stuff. And it's
Yep.
not, I'm not saying that that's great. It would be great to be thoughtful. It would be great to entertain the ideas on the table, but I need you to do things at the end of the day too. You know, it's not about ideas to have another. I hate when you have a conversation in a meeting and it's like, okay, let's have a meeting before the next meeting for when we have this other conversation. Man, come in the door, figure out what you want to do, get there, have conviction, execute, done.
Thank you. Right?
I'm
We were
tired of this
here.
stuff.
Done. We could have done this, talking about this, and playing this game at home. Like, we did not need to have a meeting. We were just going to have ideas. You could have submitted those ideas via email. This is,
Right.
that's that is a different goal. Our goal in this play is to actually make something happen.
Right. And I get the idea that, oh, maybe this kind of man is envious of that kind of man because he has that initiative to go forward.
It just doesn't move the needle for me. I mean, there are a lot of motivations in the world. I just need to find people who are able to solve the problems I have. I need to become a person who can solve the problems I have.
I mean, that's important.
That is the reason I'm asking so that I get better. I have issues. I need them solved.
So, but I just can't. It baffles me. I'm like, am I missing something here? And this is why I almost feel out of place in some circles. Some of those ideas sound great, but you know what even sound better? To actually do something with them. That's what
Yeah.
that's what be really interesting to me. And I feel like that's my lane. My lane is the okay, this is good. Okay, let's go. And then other people are like, well, wait, how do we know? Nah, let's go. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
But yeah, there's a time to take it slow and discuss.
Sure.
But that time can't be all the time. There has to be a ending. Like, what is the bare minimum we need to know to decrease the risk of something catastrophic happening? What are the risks? The risk if we do take this, and this, we lose all our money or lose all our life. Okay, what can we do to mitigate those risks? All right, now that we have that information, let's go. We technically can go now
Yeah.
because no matter what we decide, we will have enough margin to make a new decision with the next thing, whether we're right or wrong. We'll have more information.
Yeah. And I think you got people like that in business, right?
Yeah.
They do that in business. But the issue is you don't have people with conviction to do that in like ethics. You don't have the people to do that in politics.
It's rare.
They are
Hey, well,
cowards and they let Attila
run
control them. That's what
Yup.
they do. They don't have, and it's pathetic to me, man. It's a pathetic thing. And I mean, I wish I hadn't said that. I'm gonna say that was wrong what I said. Right. The way that I look at it is this: there are some people who are meant to be leaders, and then there are some people who are meant to follow others.
Well, some people
And
exhibit leadership ability, and the people who exhibit leadership, the clear vision that goes to an actual benefit, and they bring us along with them. Then I'm like, okay, you've demonstrated clear leadership ability, and I support this direction. We should all follow, unless we also have a better leadership ability and a better idea, better vision, and more people following us. Do we have that yet? No. Follow that guy then, or that girl, whatever.
uh,
It, there's there needs to be better criteria for what leadership is and what our threshold is for that constitutes following. Like, what does it mean to deserve that position? How can we know that? What evidence does this person have?
I mean, here's the thing though, Josh. It's not going to be clean. It's
No,
leadership and the conviction to go. Almost one of the essentials is it's not to ignore, but it's to not care. To just go. It's not a perfect answer.
it's
You know what
not.
I'm saying? It's not a perfect. You got to be able to deal with that. You got to be able to be comfortable with that
Well,
because
that's a big thing in leadership is risk. You need to be able to take on that risk.
you want to be able to mitigate it as much as possible. Yes, I get that. But at the end of the day, you have to pull the trigger.
Yep.
And so that's the part about leadership that is fascinating to me because I think a good leader allows people to fall into spaces where they fit better or best, right? But I don't believe that. I don't. How can I say this, man? I think that there are a lot of people who will follow who still have beefs with the leader.
True.
But what they do is they just get in the corners like, oh man, well look at him. Why does he think that he's blah blah blah? Why do we got to do that? And that's why leaders also have to kind of have a bit of a tough skin because it's like I wouldn't say they don't matter. As a leader, you just like you're trying to facilitate. You're trying to get everybody on the same page to achieve a goal, right? And you could say you don't matter, but that's not true. You do matter, but you matter here. This is where you matter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? This is where you matter. And I know you have big ideas about yourself, and that's great. We need you right here, and that's like almost like what good coaching is like. That's why I
Yeah.
like that's why I like football, like almost more than basketball, because there are people on the team who are never going to touch the ball, and they
Right.
need to do their job.
I mean, that's the beautiful part about TE for me. Like that kind of extroverted thinking is the best at strategy. It's the best at recognizing this is a person who's good over here. I'm going to make sure we put the right people in the right places. It's like great, and I love the fact that people can be so strong and that's like a second nature for them. They can look at people and immediately place them like you're good over here. I know where you go in this system. Perfect. That is phenomenal. And it's terrible when people with that strategic mindset then say, like, I know what truth is, and this is truth over here. You know
Oh,
what? That's actually not what you do. You do really well when you combine the person who knows truth and put them in that position. But like, don't try to take their job. You don't need to do that part. That's already covered.
yeah.
My favorite conversations are like with TE Doms who are like, I know truth and meaning, and that's can be found over here. I'm like, you know, I don't believe you, and I don't think you should say that out loud. Just, I would really love for you to get back in your lane and just get really confident about the things that you're good at executing on, and who would be really helpful to help you execute on that. I think you know exactly what those answers are, and that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I've had my struggles with TE in the past, and like just need you. Like I get you, but you don't get me. You don't get what I do. I get what you do. But and maybe they do get what I do, but it's a specific context. That's a lower level context than I'm looking at. So as we talking about leadership, it was this thing that I wanted to pull up real quick. It was this post that I came up on, and it jumped out to me because it's related to leadership, and it's something that I was talking about in the book almost word for word. And so let me pop this up real quick.
Differences between management and leadership. Focus and vision to start. Leaders often focus on setting the vision, providing direction, and inspiring people to reach common goals. Managers, however, tend to focus more on executing the vision set by leaders by organizing resources, managing tasks, and ensuring that day-to-day operations align with strategic goals. Leadership relies more on influence and less on formal authority. Leaders inspire and motivate others to follow them. Managers, on the other hand, often use their positional authority to accomplish tasks, relying on the formal powers attached to their role. Leaders are more likely to take risks and consider innovative solutions. They are comfortable with ambiguity and change. Managers tend to prefer established procedures and often seek control and order, making decisions based on practicality and process. So what are the fundamental differences?
So yeah, that's
Excellent.
dope
That's
to me,
brilliant.
right?
You on top of it. I gotta write that down. That's what's up.
First of all, that was great, right?
Right.
To for her to break it down like that, and I think that to me has psychological stuff written all over it. If I were to
Mm.
look at some TE versus TI type of stuff, so what I did is I just put this post up, and because it reminded me so much of the thing that I worked on. So more or less, it reminded me of what I was writing about, and it's just let me just go through it real quick. It's just like it's important to understand leadership and management are not synonymous terms, though they are frequently used as if they are. Management typically refers to a role or position within an organization hierarchy achieved through positional power. It involves the administrative and operational oversight of resources, process, and tasks. Organizations appoint managers to their positions and invest in them with formal authority. Leadership, on the other hand, transcends positional power. It is not just about holding a title or a managerial role. Leadership embodies the ability to inspire, influence, and guide others, regardless of formal authority. A leader is someone to whom group members naturally look for direction, motivation, and guidance. This can happen in formal settings where the leader is also a manager, but it is equally common in informal scenarios where the individual becomes a leader through their actions, behaviors, and ability to rally others toward a common goal. While all managers are in positions of authority, not all managers are true leaders. Similarly, not all leaders are formally recognized managers. Leadership is about the impact, influence, and inspiration one has on others, and it often emerges organically based on a person's qualities and actions. So I just thought that that was kind of like, I don't know, it just, they cross paths. So,
I think that's cool. It's interesting how these themes stick together. There's a big difference between taking on risks to come up with new solutions and lead people toward a vision versus having these really specific criteria and metrics you're trying to hit, and then coordinating all the different pieces to make sure you keep hitting things in that same structure. They're vastly different goals and vastly different skill sets.
yeah, I think one thing that pops out to me as I'm listening to it, because I hear everything in type now in a sense, right? She's like, managers take direction devised by leaders, right? And so part of the argument that I was making is like, yeah, extroverted thinking is great at doing the stuff, but they don't come up with the ideas, they just execute. That's what they do. They take the ideas from others and they execute on those ideas. And so that to me was just a fascinating piece that came out of that. As far as the masculinity, femininity piece, I think that that's a conversation that could just take a long time, but at least it needs to be had. And I'm gonna go a little personal real quick. Many people might not know this. I'm a super passionate person, right? Super passionate. And to me, to see people who want relationships, they don't even have a first step of understanding. They're not thinking about a relationship with another person. They're just thinking about a relationship almost as an idea. I mean, like a person as an idea. And they're not involving themselves with the concepts of masculinity or femininity. Their idea of what a woman wants is almost like the fairy tale idea.
Yes.
You
Didn't
know,
check any farther than that. It's as far as they got.
and they don't know. I'm gonna stop short of saying they don't know. It's just that experience has not taught me and has not taught red pillars and has not taught a lot of men who are successful with women that that's the case.
Right.
It's just not, it's just not a thing. It's not a thing that I've seen, right? Yeah, people talk about the fairy tale, but do people really, when they even get it, do they even want it when they get it?
Right? What needs are they actually thinking it's actually going to meet? And then when they find that when they get it, they're like, oh wait, did that actually meet my needs? Do I feel better? Do I have affirmation? Do I feel more connected now? It's like no, I'm just checking boxes, and this is the I put a lot of people put a lot of expectation and idealistic wishful thinking on the fairy tale idealistic or the fairy tale romance. And I find that to be very sad because there should be enough evidence in the world for people to say that didn't work out for most people the way that Disney said. Maybe that's just a TV story. Maybe that's just something that's idealistic and has no real basis in reality in the sense of this should not be the end all be all relationship to fix me. Maybe there's something else in the world.
Can we help that? Is there something that we can help?
I think parents could guide their children. I think parenting exists to where they could say this story is to here to create a directional truth. You need to find someone and meet somebody and you will work better together to build a family, to build a culture, to build a community that supports your goals. That is possible. But to pretend that the community is going to give you those goals and give you those values and make you a better person and make you have all the satisfaction, feeling, and contentment in the world is too much idea to put on the community. That is what the story is for, is to give us this idealistic idea that like, hey, this is wishful thinking, but like the kids have the opportunity to notice that their parents don't have a perfect marriage, and the parents have the ability to tell the kids, hey, while the idealistic TV story is there to make us feel things and sound nice, what it's pointing us to is the fact that real relationships are possible, but the reality here is that they take work, and you can see how me and your mom go back and forth, work at making this work. And I think if kids had that idea drilled into them, like, hey, the story, the fairy tale is just your idealistic portion to say on this continuum. We want you to work to become more, to be better acquainted with the opposite sex, to effectively build something that's worthwhile. That's a different idea than saying, oh, the princess met the prince and that's why it's all working out. Or if I go and find my prince, I'll be okay. It's like, oh no, that's not the right lesson. Learn from this. Let's go back and teach you what the lessons you should be getting from this are.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I asked that question is because I'm thinking of different fairy tales, and I'm thinking like, regardless of the type of fairy tale, can people help but be drawn to fairy tales?
Right, right. That's fair. People are going to be drawn towards stories regardless. Fairy tales, especially.
Got it. Yeah, because and I mean, I guess fairy tales is probably the wrong word that I'm thinking about because I'm just thinking about something like Atlas Shrugged, and I think a lot of men, especially objectivist men, idealize. Is that the word that I'm thinking about?
Yeah.
Idolize or idealize the whole relationship of I want a Dagny Taggart or you know what I'm
Right.
saying, like, and they're like, this is how it's supposed to be. Yeah, this is a whole bunch of women that's running railroads all around the way, around the world.
It'll be
Every day.
fine. Take your pick and you'll be okay. Oh no.
Yeah,
But yes, it's just like there's not a whole lot of Dagny Taggarts in the world. There's not a whole lot of Hank Reardons in the world. I just like
true.
people have this pretense like I deserve this. I'm like, well, do what this other person did, and then we'll discuss this deserving part. But like people's level of entitlement, I always find very ridiculous. It's just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We can all want things. So you're allowed to, express your desires, but let's not pretend to be entitled here. We can't expect to get these things that you have not earned and do not deserve. But I mean, you can work to deserve it. I'm not opposed to you continuing to strive for better, but you didn't start it better. So let's not stop there and pretend that like, oh yeah, I'm I just I as an objectivist deserve the most objective woman, the most rational woman possible of all this. I'm like, are you the most rational man possible? Is everything lining up in your life? Are you completely have integrity between your thoughts and your values and your actions every time, one to one? You had a thought and you executed. Had a thought, executed. Oh, you're not doing those things. All right, then we calm down and just allow for people to be human. We have different levels of ability, and we can work within that ability.
But here's the difficult thing with that though. Two pieces that popped up. The last one first. What people tend to do is to use their professional life as like a proxy for that. Like, oh, I'm
Right.
doing this stuff in business. I've got this job. I'm doing this, that, and other. Of course I'm rational. Like, yeah, you go to work and be rational. You come home and you're a mess. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's one part of it. The other piece of it, and I had to throw this in. This is a little bit of a side movement, side step, but I have to throw this in if I'm gonna have this conversation. And some people aren't gonna like it, and that's fine with me. And you might disagree with it. This is based upon my experiences related to all the things that we talked about here. And I hate to say it, but for some men, when they approach life in this sterile way, it's not always feminine either, because it's almost like you just not. It's a detached way. It's detached. It could be detached. It could be feminine. It could be docile. It could be weak. It could be whatever you want to call it. When you're trying to have these relationships, a problem that sometimes you're going to run into is there are men who have access to your women. Okay.
Right.
And what I have witnessed is that there are situations where, no, she doesn't want that other guy for the long term. You are the long term plan. But the other guy it's a quick thing. It's either situationship, it's either on a vacation. She may not even talk to him ever again, or may not speak to him on the street ever again. But there are men who have access to certain men's wives, girlfriends for short periods of time. And that's
Right.
all they want, right?
Right.
And I just think that it's so wild when sometimes people just they take this position like, oh my goodness, no, my wife is this and my
He's
I've
human, and
seen
there are
this.
people who are everything she wants in a certain area. So, just saying.
Yeah.
Just
And this relates to the idea of beta bucks or alpha fucks, beta bucks, that red pill type of mantra
yep.
thing. And I'm not saying that really because I think it lacks a lot of a nuance. What I'm saying is that people have to make a lot of decisions in life, and there's a lot of time between, well, hopefully, between you being an adult and your death. And you may make a mistake and you may make it on impulse, and that stuff still happened, even though it was just one time or here and there. Things happen. So, I guess my thing is just I've seen it, and I just want people to be, especially men, just be aware. You've got to have something about you, not just to keep. It's not about just trying to keep your woman from cheating or nothing like that. It's just like you have to keep people honest. To me, that's the way that I am. Like I'm a transactional person because that's the way I think I can bring about honesty. Like, hey, I'm gonna treat you like this. All right, you lose me, I'm gone. Wait, you left? Yeah, I left. That's the penalty. You know what I'm saying?
That is my deal breaker. This is my threshold. You cross the threshold. This is what you get.
Right.
It's like you don't like me. I don't like your action, and I don't tolerate that
Not
ever.
happening. And it has I think the people who are most have the most conviction and are the most strict about that are some of the greatest people in the world, in my opinion, right?
You
Because
got that, and those people and that's cool.
I love it, man, because there's a penalty. Like dealing with me, there's a penalty. That's
Right.
I this is what I talk about. People think that, oh my goodness exists in the world. We don't have to build bombs. We're beyond that now. No. What are you talking about? We don't have
Right.
to we don't have to get in fights. All we have to do is be diplomatic, and we just talk it over and talk it over some more. And like I said before, like certain people get, for lack of a better word, hip to this game. It's like, oh, this person, we can do whatever we want to do. And he just wants to play a word game afterwards. And then we'll still do whatever we want to do. But and then we'll just be like, oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this. And then we'll just go back to doing what we want to do.
We know what I
Because
do. Right. Yep.
because y'all just want to play word games. You just want me to say this thing. I can say that thing. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my
Right.
goodness, I can't believe I did. You know what I'm saying?
I love it. That's so true.
I seen one of the best cases I've seen. It was this. I'll never be able to find it again. It was this random video on YouTube. A guy went to rob a pawn shop. I think this was in Texas. Went in the pawn shop. In the pawn shop, you can lock the doors with a button. So the pawn shop owner, just locked him in the store and left.
That is awesome. Yes.
And
Yes.
so he running with the gun. He trying to bang and get the door out. I mean, trying because he got to pull the door. He can't. I guess he was trying to kick it, but it opens inward. And so you see him banging, and it's like funny because like yo, you went in the store with a gun, and now you're frustrated. And so he's banging, 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 and then the police come down the street, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Like,
What?
and all that is you've learned that this is the noise that people make when they want to get out of a situation.
There you go.
So nah, it's penalties and consequences. And as a man, yes, it's penalties and consequences with dealing with me. I'm not about that. I'm not about that life. I'm not one of them people who are just letting everything slide. My integrity is high on my list of things. And so therefore, if you behave in a manner with me that's unacceptable, you will know it. And there will be penalties and consequences of varying natures. It may
Right.
just be from me not talking to you ever again, me not supporting you. Even I wouldn't even say cancel culture, but for me, like I don't have an issue with cancel culture, but telling people like, I had a bad experience with this person. Why would you want to deal with this person? So why would I give you an advice to deal with this person who I've had a bad experience with? Doesn't make sense to me.
You're right. Yeah, I think it's man. I think the idea of expressing your opinion from cancel culture, I think that part is acceptable. I think the terrible part is where people express their opinion in such a way to cause that person financial, bodily, or relational harm. Like when they bring economic force against you, or even governmental force, like you've gone too far. Like your opinion is your opinion, and that's cool. But when you get them fired from their job, like when you call their job expressly saying this person is a terrible person, I'm not going to shop here. You don't have to shop there. That's cool. But when you're like, this person is a terrible person, you should not. They should not be hired here. I'm like, this is too much. You are going across the threshold because you're not achieving your goal. You don't like how this person behaved. Your goal is behavior change. But you can't do that now because you've gotten them fired and they can't eat. And this is a hard problem. Nothing good happening at this point. Now they have anyway, you when people respond in that way, they have forgotten what they're doing and they have forgotten what the problem is and they have failed to solve their problem. And that bothers me. And I'm like, hey, you've gone beyond expressing your opinion now. Now we're causing problems.
I mean, but Josh, that really what you just explained comes down to the company, right?
Yes.
It's just because
Yes.
look at look at the whole situation as an example. Chick-fil-A, and it was like some type of home gay situation, and Chick-fil-A was like, "Yeah, that's how we roll, and that's how we're going to do it, and you don't have to like it." You know, and so to me, that's what conviction does for you. Because
Yeah.
what happens is you if you have good grounding, the people who have this weird view disappear. I mean,
Yep.
bodily harm, I get that. That's a crime. We should prosecute that. Theft, that's a crime. I'm good. We should prosecute that. You calling in to get people fired? I mean, look, what I'm gonna tell you, don't call in to get somebody fired. You had a bad experience. As a company, I've got to field that call. I don't have to, but I'm going to field this call, and we're going to make a decision based upon what we know about the customer. I mean, about our employee.
Right.
So I guess this is like this domino effect of not making judgment. Like that's a company issue.
It is. You're right. And I disagree with how companies have responded to people who try to cancel others. I think what they do is wrong and ineffective because it creates a long term problem when we only had a short term issue. I'm like, we're doing this wrong and this cannot end well. Like, we're not leaving room for things to get better. Which I'm like, why did you do that? But again, it's not my job to make the decision for them. I'm just saying I do not like it. I do not like it. And that's what I associate with cancel culture. Like, I associate the long-term detriment with cancel culture. When I hear cancel culture, I'm like, oh, I remember that one time they did this terrible thing and it worked out poorly. Oh yeah.
I mean, look, I'm open to having a conversation about cancel culture because of all the people that I know, the people that I talk to willingly, I'm one of the only people who have no issue with cancel culture.
Okay.
Because to me, what you're saying is that I don't want results for my actions, or I only want the results for my actions that I like. And it just doesn't work like that. You know what I'm saying? It's
Work
just,
like that. But that's well, what you're saying makes sense. I mean, in the sense that there are things I don't like. I think it is morally wrong for someone to prosecute or persecute someone socially or through the courts in this way. Like, this is not a helpful way. This hurts society. Do not do it. And people in society who contribute to it or who are okay with it, no, people who facilitate this kind of crazy, I think should be held accountable. Like, this is not acceptable behavior from the people who allow it and the people who perpetrate it.
but see,
Yes.
man, when you say it, I need to know exactly what it is. Because if it is stalking, to me, that's a crime. If
Okay.
it is, if it is calling your job because I had a complaint about an issue, that's just how that works. You know
Well,
that.
see, work where they call your job about a non-job related issue, and I think that is the problem.
Oh well,
Is that people
no.
I don't have this person likes this other person's tweet on this unrelated thing over here, and they work at this random factory. I'm like, yeah, but why did you call the factory to get them fired from the factory? It's like, I don't agree with their stance on gay marriage. I'm like, but what does that have to do with how they make make your bacon?
But
Like, I
hold
don't.
up. But hold up, Josh. Let me insert something else in here though, real quick. Just throw in something like super racial, you know, or like a rape or something like that. I don't know. Can you
Right?
say that on the call? But the whole thing is like, if you insert something that you like, oh my goodness, but that's terrible. Now I want you to call. Now there was a racial issue. Somebody called somebody the N word, and the terrible people, and especially if it's on camera, then people
Yeah,
would be like, "Oh my goodness."
that's where I would agree with. Like, I don't have that issue of saying, like, there's very little people can do in their not work life to where you should definitely take them out of their job. I don't particularly care about that. I have a problem with people. If you're going to call their job about, you should call their job about a job specific relevant issue. Like, hey, I needed surgery and this person refused to treat me because I was black. Then I'm like, okay, now there's a racial issue that affects their job. We should talk about that because they did not do their job. That's different.
I don't
But
know,
them
man.
just being angry and racist over here, I'm like, as long as they still do their job, I don't care. I mean, I work with angry racists every day, and it doesn't affect my paycheck. So I'm like, I don't really care.
I mean, I get it. I get what you're saying. This is why I'm not on that side. Because to me, if you take the path that you're talking about, it becomes unwritten rules. It becomes, oh, if it's this, then do it this way. If it's that, then do it this way. I take the path of no, you're open to it. Like, but if you're stealing, if you're stalking, if you're assaulting, those things you should prosecute, right?
Right.
But if you're just nagging, y'all just got to deal with it. You just got to deal with it. Because when you start making the lines ambiguous, that's where the problems. That's where they arise because there's no clear definitions.
That's why I wouldn't say it's ambiguous. I would say like the part where you agreed to do some sort of function or some sort of job, you've made some sort of agreement. When you break that agreement, that's when you that's when your complaint becomes valid. Like until then, I have a whole lot of like, hey, there are preference complaints you can always have, but those are not valid enough to act on besides just nagging. Like you can always nag, whatever. I think that part's free speech, whatever. The government doesn't have to crack down on that. But like when people are taking that extra step and have unvalid complaints, meaning like non-functional related things, and they're like, hey, I don't like the way you feel about these preferences I have over here. I'm like, you are free to express that opinion, but like that's not something that you called a job about. You don't have to. That is not the appropriate response to disagreements.
Nah, man, we're totally on a different sides on this one. Because the way I'm seeing it is really, if I were to look at this like people, you're basically saying, oh, company, you don't have to exercise judgment. Shield we're going to shield the company from having to make a decision about their employee because we're not going to allow certain type of nagging or like no the company should that's you got in business, you've got to make choices about the people you hired, and so they're going to be people they need to sharpen that skill. Somebody's coming at one of my employees. We feel strongly about them. I mean, because to give you a perfect example, then you start getting NFL rules where like there was just somebody brought a case, suspend them. Now it's like you the point I guess my point is like, yo, they should face negative consequences for the decisions that they make instead of trying to make now they're making political positioning, imaging choices in a sense, right? This happened to I think it was named Bauer. It was a pitcher for the Dodgers. A woman brought a case against him and lied, and he hadn't pitched in like 3 years, but
Terrible.
and
It
he
is
caught him on video. He caught him on video. I mean, on audio or video or whatever. But the point of it is, they don't have to deal with the consequences of their job. They're not developing judgment skills as an organization because what they're doing is just reacting to public opinion. If
yes.
all the public had to do was cry and whine to get people removed, do you think that they're going to increase doing that or decrease doing it?
All they're going to do is increase. That's what the incentive is set up for, and that's
So
what's terrible.
if the companies start cowering more, I don't know. I think this is an interesting conversation because, look, I'm open to hearing other points of views. I don't
Right?
buy it. I just think that we can't set up a world where it could be this and could be that. Well, you can because that's what
Right,
we
but we
are.
don't have to do that. All I'm saying is that we shouldn't set up an arbitrary world. I'm saying we should set up a functional world, a practical world. I'm
I
saying we
get
can
it, but you
you have
got
the
my thing is you're putting what you're trying to set up is automatically putting you in a this type of world. That's what my argument is. You're
how,
going to be like that.
how do you what do you mean when you say that? I'm you saying like there's a arbitrary way to implement it?
I'm saying that nagging is going to be the kind of nagging that I like versus the kind of nagging that you like. I don't see how you can objectively say, like, what are you going to say? You can't call the job about something that didn't happen at the job.
Okay, so I think we're talking about a method issue, and that's fair. Like they can always call the job about whatever they disagree with because that's their ability. Like that, they have agency. So
Okay.
I don't think we need to have laws against that. I'm saying it's morally wrong to do so, to cause people who are solving a practical problem to have a system set up that removes people solving practical problems based off of preferences. You're allowed to complain and say, I have our preferences are different. I'm like, sure. But if you start responding to preferences, if the company responds to people's preferences in a way that removes the practical people who are solving problems from the company, that makes me like that long term cannot work. That is a system that is destined to fail, and that's morally wrong. Now you've moved society closer to death. This is a terrible response. You should not respond to nagging with removal of the problem solvers. We should respond to nagging with, hey, I see you are different. Let's work on conflict resolution. Like
I
this is
mean,
this is just a different approach. But like it shouldn't be illegal to speak out.
oh, I mean,
I'm
so
just
like for me, because what else? What? Why do I have to care what you're saying? Then? That's my point. Is if it's not illegal, if it's not going to get me locked up or have somebody come to my house with a gun, why do I care about this?
right. And like again, the only thing people are doing with the nagging is trying to gain attention and a response from the company that allows them to feel powerful. And I'm like, that's the company should not
Oh,
do that. They should
yeah.
have a more appropriate relationship would say, hey, the thing you say is irrelevant to the problem that this person solves. Shut the fuck up. If you have a problem with this person, feel free to use your words and like resolve your conflicts like human beings. You say a thing, they say a thing, y'all agree, y'all disagree, y'all agree, disagree, whatever. But stop. There should not be a social consequence where people are like, hey, I don't I don't like this thing. Now let me conflate the entire organization with the one tweet from this one person this one time, and let's reject it. Like I think that
You
is
don't
a
like the responses of the organizations.
right.
I
Yes.
mean, I hear you. I agree with you. I mean, but what am I going to do? Lock them?
No,
They-
we're not gonna do anything. All we can say is like, hey, people who respond this way, this is terrible. I think I think the problem is the specific response of PR companies. I think that those people could be taught better conflict resolution skills and find better ways to solve this issue. Like there are multiple ways to address conflicts. It does not have to be blame this person, fire this person, the end. You're not winning there. Don't do that.
so
Although there are times, but most of the time it's not that.
this is my thing with this, George, and I'm hopeful that this might give you some insight to the way I think about things and maybe clear some stuff. I'm always looking for that incentive. Like we can say this is wrong and you shouldn't do that, but my mind always is going to go to, well, what penalties do I pay for that thing being wrong? If there's no penalties for me paying for this thing being wrong, I don't really want to talk about it because there's no incentive for me to stop doing this thing. You know what I'm saying? So if you were to say the companies,
A long time.
you say what?
A lot of the penalties I'm thinking of are long-term penalties, and I think that's the issue is that they are because they're not short-term. People aren't thinking about them.
Okay, I mean, so this now becomes a thing about principle, right? And it's just your company, you hired people, you took on the risk,
You did.
make decisions. And to me, that's why I like competition because, hey, if you're always capitulating to public perception and part of business is, I wouldn't say capitulating to public perception, but adjusting to public perception. That is part of business. But if you keep capitulating to public perception, then I want a company out there who's going to take all the good people that you let go of and
Right.
make use of them. and put you out of business. Like I when I think about business, man, and when I think about all of this stuff, it is war. I look at it as like it's almost like war. Let me not say it's war, but I don't want anybody who cannot operate at the top levels of their industry to be able to survive. I want you to die as a company.
Yes.
That's what I want.
You pivot and go somewhere else. Go do a whole separate thing.
Yep. And people were like, well, mom and pop has to have in store. And what about this? If they can't survive, get them out of here. If
Mhm.
and I think to me that deserves a whole conversation because I don't think a lot of people understand why I'm saying that. And I think it probably would take more to explain why I'm saying that because it actually makes a better world when that is happening. It gives people different opportunities. But yeah, no, there's no right for you to stay in business. Serve the customer,
Thank you. There you go.
and
That's what business is for. We're trading value for value.
yeah,
You have something people want and you find the people who want it, and y'all continue to trade. As long as you focus on them and help them with what they need, you're allowed to keep being in business. That's the
yeah,
only allowable we have.
yeah. But then you
Find
get
that
people
out.
jumping into it, and they brought this up in the chat. I guess Google got some antitrust
Mhm.
findings against them, yeah, which is nonsense.
It's
This
ridiculous.
is
We have
people
terrible.
wanted the stuff. We
Thank you.
wanted the stuff.
You made up their own reason, like even though you're doing the same thing everybody else is doing, you're in the wrong. How dare you advertise on your own website about your own stuff? Mine, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine. You know who I needed to ask? It was me, myself, and I, and we all agreed that we should do it, and I did it. So I don't know who I'm hurting. Who am I keeping from doing this? What do you mean? Well, other people can't do it like you're doing it. You have an unfair advantage. Yeah. That's
that's
my head.
that's the
That's the
whole
whole reason
point.
I'm doing it, and therefore I did it. See, that's how it works.
Yeah, but that's so ridiculous, right, man? Is that not a ridiculous way of looking at life?
That
Like,
is that is so yeah, it's insane, and it's insane that we allow people to get away with that. As far as why are they persecuting the people who are solving this problem for us? Is somebody else going to come along and be better and help? No, because we've noticed that it hasn't happened in the entire existence of human nature.
then they're gonna
So
cry. Then they're gonna cry like, oh man, we used to have X, Y, and Z. I wonder what happened to that. Like, you know what I want to do? I want to do a small talk on the 60-minute story about when the government pushed for all of the small businesses to consolidate and they made the big what it was big five or big six. And now they can't control prices. Now they're
yeah,
like, oh my God, these prices, look at these prices. You idiots. You know what I'm saying? You stupid.
consequences. What? How could this happen? You did this. What do you mean how? You you, you followed step A to Z, and this is what we ended up with. It's not a secret.
Oh my
All
God.
right, this is never. You did this. You did this. You dropped the milk. That's why there's milk on the floor. Why is there all this spilled milk? It was your job to hold the cup. What do you mean?
We just wanted to consolidate the people so we could get better pricing.
It's not how pricing works.
Ridiculous.
This is why we don't let you do this. Let the business people do business. What was your one job?
Man, I'm telling you, we gotta do this story because he just thought this was unbelievable. I can't believe this is the result of what happened. Can't who would have known? Who would have known?
Oh no, it's terrible. It's terrible because it's true.
And so what is there? So I think I brought this up to somebody and they just pulled out some rationalization. They were like, well, to get government contracts now, you've got to take on a minority partner a lot of the times to get these. Also, you've now let the government come up with some nonsense to cover over the nonsense that was created in the beginning. So now we just and I wrote about this like bad idea on top of bad idea on top of bad idea, and they stack. And if people who think well don't think about implementation, all you're going to do is have a bunch of stacked bad ideas that you don't even know how to get back to square one because you're so slow to try to implement anything.
Right, right, right.
Stupid, man.
It's stupid. It's preventable. And then when we have the consequences of our actions, we don't look back and say, "Oh, oh, this happened directly because of this. It's, it'd be fun to kind of connect those dots and just make that very clear. Like it's just because this happened in every single, it happens in every single category, every single industry. I mean, it happened in healthcare over and over and over again, where we're like, oh, we need to hide and help the people. Let's create this Medicare and Medicaid, and let's see if we can help these people. Let's build these asylums so we can make sure all the crazy people are taken care of. Let's outsource that to the government. Let's just let them do it. Let's let the government do it. We'll stop letting the charities and all the rest of the people for profits do all this care. There's too many people. We need the government to step in. All right, let's give it to the government. The government's doing it because the government's not paying people anymore. Okay, they're having staffing issues. Okay, this the more we're taking care of the sick people, the more sick people there are. This is terrible. You know what? We don't have enough money for this. Now let's release them all back into the public and let's just call it a day. Well, we tried. I'm like, now we have a huge homelessness problem. Now all of a sudden crime is rampant. Now all of a sudden when any person tries to get treatment, they no longer get continuous treatment. There's no more continuity of care. It's almost like someone created a problem that was right there that was already being addressed and held the problem in their hand until they got enough money, until they realized, oh, we don't have enough money for me to have anymore. I'm going to drop this problem.
Hmm.
It's crazy. And this happened, this happened just over and over and over again. And it's happening now with just healthcare in a way that's so like obvious. It's everywhere I look. I'm just like, I'm not sure what it's going to take for the government just to drop the ball and be like, you know what? Old people there are a lot of them. We had to pay too much for this Medicare thing. We're just gonna drop it. Let's just stop doing it. Like they're just like we're gonna keep increasing the age. We're gonna just keep aging people out and see how this goes. No, this is going to go the same way how it always goes, and eventually just going to renege on their promise, and then it's going to drop all this problem in the lap of the American people yet again. And then we're going to be like, how could this happen? I guess, well, come on, man. We all know this is a problem. We had a solution. You said you would step in, but now you are making the solution worse. You made the problem worse than it was by getting rid of the solution.
I mean, look, that's why people with ideas need to think about implementation,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And be, I need courage from my thinkers. I need courage and I need you to think about implementation. I don't want to hear, oh, well, we need some more data. And I mean, look, data is great, but the people who are taking action, they use data in a in a manipulative way, in a sense, right?
Right.
They just gather data and numbers to just to make the point that they wanted to make. That was the whole point. And the thoughtful person's like, well, we need to look at this and look at look, man. I need you to act. And one of the things I learned is that being a thoughtful person and not acting, I'm like, wait, what about those people over there? They're just doing what they want. And I just thought like, oh, no, you should just do. You should just go. If you're thoughtful, it'll just come out in the woodwork. But you need to act. Okay? You need to act. You're not relevant if you're not acting. If you're not doing things, you are not relevant. So I don't want to hear a bunch of complaints about the world when all you're doing is sitting there thinking about the world. I need you to go out there. That's my thing.
I mean, that's true. I think that's everybody has a thing that they could do, and there are things they could focus on, plan for, act to effectively move the needle forward in the direction of a solution just a little bit. And while there are things to research, there are minimum viable services, products, solutions that you can be working toward. I'm like, certain things take too long for you to fix the whole system. I'm not asking for that. Do what you can do. Do take a small chunk out of it and make a small project that you can do.
Yeah, and then create a feedback loop.
Yeah,
You know, it's not the purpose is not to fail, but you do need data so you can get better.
there
You
you,
know,
there you go. You can't calibrate if you have nothing to use to make those adjustments.
but it's just that certain people are unwilling to jump in the ring with others. Like I like the idea of gangsters for good. Can that be a bad thing? Yeah, it certainly could. But at the end of the day, people who don't take opportunities, don't take power, don't get it. Nobody's giving you anything out here. You're not
Right?
getting it. Oh my goodness, let's just hold off and let this person over here who doesn't say much and Let's just let them have an op. Doesn't work like that. It's
Nope.
it's just a fight, and if you're not in the fight, then get out the way. That's all I care.
If you're abdicating yourself, if you're abdicating your responsibility in this fight. Don't be surprised when this fight doesn't go the way you want. Like I understand that there are problems, and it's fine to point these problems out. Like, hey, these things exist, but we can't stop there if we want things to get better.
Agreed, man. Agreed.